Hello and welcome, everyone. In healthcare, there is often too much information and not enough time. Here at the Melanin Initiative, we avoid TMI by breaking things down into language you can understand. We create a safe space to ask your questions and share our nursing perspective without taking up too much of your time. Today, we'll be speaking with our special guest, Kelsey Wilson. Kelsey is a special guest here for us at the Melanin Initiative podcast. She has been a guest on our show previously to discuss intergenerational trauma, navigating the holidays with family, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, emotional healing, and eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, and most recently, trauma. In addition, Kelsey was our 2024 Emerging Excellence Award recipient. So she's very special to us. We are excited to have her back with us once again. And today we'll be discussing forgiveness. If you're new here, welcome to the Melanin Initiative. I'm Alicia, and I co-host the Melanin Initiative along with Geraldine and Kimberly, who sends her love in her absence. We are a health literacy podcast offering our nursing perspective. When we say health literacy, we're talking about your ability to obtain information, to understand that information, and to use that information to manage your health and advocate for others. It's our hope by watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or listening on your favorite podcast app. We hope you feel empowered to ask questions, educated on how to manage your health, and confident to navigate the healthcare system. If you haven't already, subscribe so you can be notified when we release a new episode. Thumbs up the video and leave a comment or two. It helps us help you. It also shows the algorithm that this information is important, so that when people like you look for information like this, we show up higher in the search results. As a reminder, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are our opinions alone, and they are not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you are experiencing a medical emergency, you should seek medical attention and medical guidance from your healthcare provider. If you're having a physical emergency, you can call 911. And if you're having a mental health emergency, you can call 988 or text 741-741. So once again, welcome back, Kelsey. We are so excited to have you here with us today. And we are looking forward to a very engaging discussion with you regarding forgiveness.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Of
No.
course.
So before we jump into our topic of forgiveness today, Kelsey, please remind the audience, for those that are new here today, please remind the audience what it is exactly that you do.
Yes, thank you. And I'm so excited to be back. So thank you for having me. For those of you who are watching for the first time, my name is Kelsey Wilson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a therapist. I have a private practice for women who have experienced childhood trauma, are going through anxiety, depression, burnout, or life transition issues. One of my new niches that I've actually just added is military affiliates as well. So women who are spouses of military members or who are children of military members, feel free to reach out for therapy services. As a military brat myself, I understand, the ins and outs that come with being in a military family. So that's just a little bit about my practice. I am licensed in Virginia and I'm licensed in DC. So for those of you who are residents of those areas, please do connect with me.
Perfect. So to dive into this episode all about forgiveness, let's start by defining what is forgiveness.
Yes, definitely. And that's a great question. And it's something that I help a lot of my clients kind of navigate and work through. A lot of my clients have trauma of, you know, experience that they've experienced from their childhood or who have gone through trauma as an adult. And I think it's difficult to, I guess, process the word forgiveness when we're talking about trauma sometimes. But I want to kind of define it and then we can talk about it a little bit more in depth. So, forgiveness is the conscious decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards someone who's hurt you. We can forgive regardless of whether they actually deserve forgiveness or not. Some people may be like, well, what do you mean? Like, why would I want to do that? But here's the thing, like if you're working on forgiving someone, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to forget what they did.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that we're excusing the harm that they did, but we're allowing ourselves to let go of the grip that the pain has over our life. So in the healing process, forgiveness is key because it helps us release like emotional burdens that keep us stuck in cycles of anger and bitterness and self-blame. So, what a lot of people don't know is like when we hold on to those feelings, sometimes it can make us sick over time. And I know you all are nurses, so I'm sure you've seen people come into different, healthcare spaces who are going through their physical health, but like have some emotional things that they're working through, and how that can impact their physical health as well. But in my practice, I do a lot of EMDR therapy. And for those of you who haven't caught that episode, definitely go back and check it out. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And it really helps people go back in time to look at past memories that were distressing, where someone did some harm to them or made them feel uncomfortable or made them feel distressed in some way, and reduce the distress about those memories so that they release the tension that they hold in their body over those memories. And sometimes that can make it easier to forgive. So a lot of people find EMDR helpful for that specific purpose. And I always remind my clients that just because we're feeling less distressed about past memories that happen doesn't mean that we forget it, doesn't mean that we have to get back in relationship with that person or keep them close to us. We're just releasing that tension so that we can have a healthy life for ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you said that, because I think people do, they do kind of hold in, like they don't want to forgive someone because the person could have did something like horrible to them, and they don't feel that they should forgive them. But I like that you brought up the point that, you can forgive someone and not have to deal with that person ever again, or, like they might not necessarily need to be in your life still, but you just forgive them to let go of that hurt so that you can move on with your life and your emotions and be, a productive, individual. So I like that you touched based on that.
Yeah. And I think go ahead, Alicia. You
Oh
were
no,
going to
go
say
ahead.
something?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's a huge difference between like forgiveness and reconciliation, right? Like
Yeah.
just because I forgive you doesn't mean that we're going to reconcile and we're going to be the same way that we were before the act that you did or the thing that you said. And there are some people who want to forgive and reconcile, and there's some people who want to reconcile but not necessarily forgive. So the two don't have to go hand in hand together. And so like teaching people about the difference between the two and how sometimes they go together but sometimes they don't can really be freeing for people.
Mm.
So what I hear from the conversation is that forgiveness equals healing for you. Forgiveness isn't about the other person or people or whomever. Forgiveness is for you. So it sounds like that's the goal of when you sit down and talk with people, that it's less about the other person and how they're going to feel about it, but it's more about how it's going to help you.
Definitely. Yep. And also teaching about healthy distance. We can forgive people and then have healthy distance from them. We don't have to keep talking every day or keep exposing them, especially if they're not going to change the behavior that they did, or if what they did was extremely harmful and traumatic. Of course, we may not want to keep that person in our space. And so we make room for talking about all of those things in therapy. And so that's why a lot of people choose to come into therapy so they can have an unbiased perspective, work with a therapist who can help them sort through their thoughts and their feelings at the same time. Yeah.
Awesome. So, if forgiveness was easy, we would all do it, right? So, what are some barriers that you've witnessed from your clients to forgiveness?
Yeah. So sometimes it's really hard to forgive if we've had past experiences of trauma, like in our childhood, for instance, where maybe a caregiver or a loved one apologized, but they didn't change their behavior.
Mhm.
And so now, like as an adult, we might have trust issues when it comes to hearing the word I'm sorry or hearing someone say that they apologize and really do the work to try to adjust their behavior, because we've kind of built up this like defense mechanism inside of us that says, well, people used to tell me that they were sorry and they didn't change their behavior, or they continue to hurt me in some way. And we also sometimes, run into relationships where the people that we're in relationship with kind of do the same behaviors as people that we've,
Mhm.
had in our past life, with our parents or caregivers and things like that. So it can be really hard. That's definitely a barrier um, that a lot of people run into. I think sometimes as well, like when we have other people, like, so I work with a lot of parents, right? And so, you know, if someone's in relationship with someone else and like they don't change their behaviors, it can sometimes impact the kids and impact
Mhm.
other things that are kind of like in the family circle. And so it's like, that's also another barrier because there's more people to think about than just like forgiving this one person. It impacts other people.
Right.
Right.
And speaking of that, so like just why is it difficult to forgive? Like why can't we do it?
Yeah, I think it's cognitive and then it's also like somatic, so like within your body. So if you're feeling a lot of tension and kind of built up resentment towards this person, it's kind of working with both pieces, right? Like cognitively, I have to forgive, and then I also have these like stored feelings and tension in different areas of my body, whether it be my shoulder, my gut, maybe like in my back where I just feel like tension every time I'm around this person who's done something wrong to me. So it makes it hard because you're dealing with two pieces kind of sending messages back and forth to each other, and it can be like a pull.
Right. And I think it's also difficult to forgive when like in some instances you can separate from that individual and not interact and um not have to be in that space. But there are some times when um you attempt to forgive, but you become re-triggered because that individual you can't, for instance, maybe a mother and a father, but maybe they are divorced, but they have young children. So they still have to interact and communicate.
Yeah.
And they don't have the opportunity to necessarily separate and really have time to heal independently without interacting with each other. And those spaces can be difficult to manage. Maybe it's a child and a parent relationship where, they want to forgive, but, they don't have the opportunity to separate. How should someone navigate that?
Yeah. I would say so even for my clients who are separate from their partner or they're going through like challenges with their previous partner, I always recommend family therapy or working with a couples therapist, depending on the dynamic of the relationship. Of course, if it's safe and they feel comfortable to
Yeah.
be able to do those things, because it just creates like more an open line of communication to be able to kind of navigate and work through those things on an individual basis. Like I work with my clients on how to like verbally work through conversations as they're going through the forgiveness process. And that brings up another good point. Sometimes we think forgiveness is linear, right? Like you did this thing, I forgive you, and then I never think about it again. But life
Right.
is just not that clean. Like sometimes there's triggers that pop up that make us remember what the person did. And then we kind of have to circle back and refresh and work on that forgiveness piece again. It's kind of like a grief process,
Mm,
right? We think that
Mhm.
there's the stages of grief and we're just supposed to go through it very cleanly and very nicely, but life is just not always that way. And sometimes we have to circle back and like refresh and come back at it again and say, is this person someone that I can forgive and reconcile with? Is this someone that I can just forgive and I need to have healthy distance from? Or am I really unsure and I need my therapist and myself to kind of go through and figure it out?
mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we often hear, we always hear those stories about how, couples are going through something and then they're on a good trajectory and then some trigger happens and it almost feels like a setback because that
Yeah.
trigger kind of reopened up something for them. And, they now have to kind of pivot. So you're absolutely correct on it's not linear. And you think you could be going on this path and then something happens. It could be something like a song on the radio. And it's like,
Yeah.
I remember that day when that song was playing and we had this conversation and now I'm mad again, So it could be the trigger doesn't have to be necessarily a big offense, but I don't think we realize how the environment, plays a role in like what triggers us and like that could also affect our healing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. What unique challenges do you think communities of color may face in finding forgiveness?
Yeah. So I think that in relationships, like especially in communities of color, like uh, having access to be able to speak with people who could be like a mediator, like a therapist, can sometimes be a challenge. If maybe no one in your family ever sought out that type of help, it's kind of like, oh, I have to deal with these issues on my own because like my parents and people before me have always taught me that I had to deal with issues on my own. But I think one of the things that I'm happy about is like we kind of progress through the years. Like
Yeah.
communities of color are coming to therapy more
Mhm.
and really being open to doing that healing in a space where you have someone who's actively there to help you kind of work through not only the conflict at hand, but like also the generational things that and messages that we've kind of heard about what is appropriate when we have a problem. Do we have to always deal with it on our own because we just have to tough it out? Or is it okay to like actually speak with a therapist who can help us figure out problems and how to approach things? I think therapy is becoming more accessible to
Yeah.
communities of color, which is awesome. And I love that for us. And so as we eliminate those barriers, I think our community is just going to get stronger. Our communities of color are just going to get stronger and healthier. So it's something that I'm really happy about.
So it's interesting that we're talking about this. I actually had an experience with this last week. Everyone knows that I'm a nursing director. So one of my nurses came up to me to tell me about a quote unquote aggressive patient. And that's, usually what they come to me to to handle those situations. And I was just asking her, well, why do you think this is taking place like this? And she's like, I don't know, Alicia, but I went into his room. I was just explaining to him that I was being nice to him and he shouldn't speak to me that way. And then he started crying. And what he was saying was, thank you for being nice to me. I wish I would have been nice to my family. I have no one. I'm in here by myself. I don't have my kids. I don't have my wife. And actually, was diving deeper, realized that the wife and him haven't been together for 13 years. Like, this is not a fresh feeling for him, but something in her kindness brought up those feelings for him. And it almost sounded like he was in a space where he needed to forgive himself, right? So on that note, how do you counsel women, because I know your focus in your practice is women, regarding forgiveness for themselves and for those who may have contributed to their traumas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like as you said, I work with a lot of women who have experienced, trauma that's sexual, physical, like traumatic invalidation. And so, we do a lot of work around how those events and those experiences affect them as a person. Sometimes when we go through traumatic experiences, there's a lot of negative messages that we believe about ourselves because the person who was traumatized us maybe said some of these messages and we internalized it like it's your fault that this happened, or they maybe messages that you've internalized over the years, or I'm not lovable, or people don't like me, or maybe I deserved what happened to me. So when you come into therapy, I'm helping my clients kind of navigate some of those negative messages, and EMDR, we would call them negative cognitions, and really bring down the distress about those memories that were associated with those negative memories so that we can be free from those messages and come up with new messages that we want to tell ourselves instead, like, I am worthy. It wasn't my fault that that situation happened. I do deserve love. I am a good person. What this person did was an act of their own, and I am not deserving of those things that happened to me. And I'm allowed to have healthy relationships. I'm allowed to be free and think about positive things that I can do in my future because I deserve it.
Mm, love that. What advice would you have for parents who have teenagers or just children in general, as it relates to forgiveness?
Yeah. So I would say for individuals who have teens, just kind of listening and providing that support and structure to their teens, be willing to have conversations openly and honestly about the stressors that kind of come with being a teen, and be willing to like apologize sometimes as a parent, if you notice that something's happened that made your teen upset, or maybe you approached a situation and you wish you could have done it differently, because sometimes teens hearing their parent apologize goes a long way, and when they grow up and they become parents themselves, they'll be able to remember, like, oh, my parent, they did this thing that maybe they felt sorry for, and they were actually able to verbalize and say, I'm sorry. And I was able to practice forgiveness when they did that. And we were able to build our relationship and grow in a healthy way after that. So I'm going to do that same thing. And that's how we kind of heal intergenerational trauma, right? My parent made a different choice than maybe their parent did. They said sorry and like they apologized for something that they did that was wrong. And now I want to carry out that same thing. If I do something that maybe I wish I didn't have done, I can tell my kid I'm sorry. And now we can kind of continue that, you know, same energy like with the next generation.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, open communication, apologizing, forgiving your kid for things that maybe they did that you didn't like, and really setting a healthy tone for moving forward.
Mm.
So I love that you brought that up. Of course, here on the Melanin Initiative, we always focus on some of our vulnerable populations. And I think it's especially interesting to navigate the space of forgiveness especially in the Black community when it comes to our parents. And really, I guess for me, like our parents and our parents' parents are like our grandparents per se. And it could almost be seen as a sense of like disrespect to like say how you feel, talk about negative feelings, I guess you could say, to those who are older than us. And even when we feel as if we deserve an apology, we're not going to get an apology. So how do you navigate those spaces with those of, a more seasoned generation who you may not get that validation that you're seeking?
Yeah, so you're saying like if women come to me and they maybe never heard their parent apologize, how do I navigate having conversations about how to still have relationship with their parent or how to
Right. And
have like
maybe
relationship
that
with their
door's
parent?
not even open, right? Like you are looking for that forgiveness. You're looking for that I'm sorry. You're looking for that, acknowledgement that maybe things could have gone differently, but you're not going to get that. So how do you navigate that space, and how do you forgive in that arena?
Yeah. So I would say that's like a place where we have to talk about like what's within our control and what's not within our control.
Mhm.
Because sometimes when we come into therapy, we're having anxiety about things that are outside of our control. This
Mm,
person won't tell me this thing that I need them to tell me in order for me to move forward and feel better. But that's
mhm,
where that self forgiveness comes into play. That's where forgiveness of people who maybe won't say the words that we need to hear comes into play. Um, because we can't control that our parents won't apologize, or that our aunt
Yeah.
or this teacher that did this thing, or you know this person from 10 years ago won't apologize, but we can control forgiving for ourselves so that we can release that tension and be able to live our life the way that we want to live it, fulfilling and happy and healthy, and as healthy as we can be. um yeah, that would be my feedback for that.
I like that advice too, because I come from a background, I'm Haitian American, and in our culture, I don't think my parents ever told me they were sorry for something that they did to me, although they probably were, or they might have been. I don't think they ever told my brother and I that they were sorry for anything. We just basically had to deal with it and just keep it moving. So it's great that you brought up the point that like you kind of just have to learn how to like navigate not getting that I'm sorry, and learn how to like move forward from that, even though you know that sorry might not be in the cards for you, and just learning how to move forward past that.
Yeah. And I will add the caveat that, like, I do have some clients where their family members are open to going to family therapy. And even though you thought that your parent would never say this thing, they go to
Mhm.
family therapy and then they say they're sorry, or they,
Ooh.
acknowledge the things that they've done that were harmful or maybe not as helpful. So there's always hope there for, families who are open to that. But I think in this specific scenario we're talking about, when families maybe don't want to pursue that route, and so that's where doing that individual work can really come into play.
I think that goes back to where we started. Forgiveness is for you,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily for that other individual to understand or to get it, but it's for you to heal and to be able to move on with your life in a positive manner. So with that being said, how can our audience stay connected with you?
Definitely. So if you are on Instagram, definitely follow me, at Kelsey Wilson PLLC. That's my handle. If you're interested in pursuing therapy services or enrolling in my upcoming women's empowerment workshop, definitely visit my website, kelseywplc.com. My workshop will be rolling out next year in January. And so it'll be a 4-week workshop on self empowerment, burnout prevention, self care, goal setting for 2025. So I look forward to connecting with some of you through a therapy perspective or the workshop. And I'm really glad that you all let me come on today and be able to speak about forgiveness. It's such an important topic.
Yes,
And I know I'll be back in the future to talk about some more topics. So
of
thank you for
course.
having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kelsey. For our audience, you can always email us your questions or show ideas at tmi.melanin@gmail.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on every social media platform. Say hello in the comments when you get there. Please share the show with your friends, rate the Apple Podcast and Spotify, and leave a comment. It really helps the show get more support and gets the message out there to those who need it. You can find all of our social media links and a list of resources related to our conversation today in the description box. We release a new show weekly on TMI Sundays at 12 noon on YouTube and all of your favorite podcast apps. Follow, like, and share our content with all of your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.